Okay, we are live now. Hello, 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 and welcome back, everyone, to Caregivers Embracing Elder Care. This is our season 2. I am so super happy to be here with you guys. If you're new to the show, you may not remember or know me. My name is Bahamia. I am a geriatric care manager here in Southern California, joined by my lovely co-host, Robin Downs of Yoga Flava, and her father. And today we have the ultimate guest speaker. Her name is Dr. Teresa Kenedy, and she is going to be talking to us about some of the issues that we have kind of talked about in our past season, but particularly we're going to be talking about elder guardianship. And she's going to help everyone kind of shed some light on some issues, questions, things that we've all been going through and as caregivers, and also kind of share her experience as well. So Robin, I'll let you say hello to the folks, and then Dr. Kenedy, you will jump on in and give us some great information, but take it away, Robin.
Okay, and I always just like to take a moment as we start to center ourselves, to connect with our breath. And the other thing that everyone really needs to know is that Dr. Teresa Kenedy is also a yoga instructor, and our paths have crossed somewhere around 20-something years ago. So it's so wonderful to be in sync and along the same journey as we acknowledge each other.
Yes.
So to begin, I'd like for us to put both our palms on our lower belly for deep diaphragmatic breathing. A lot of us, kind of hold stuff in the chest, and the subject that we're going to be talking on may trigger some people. So just close your eyes, internalize your awareness. Inhale a full belly breath. And then exhale through your nose and really squeeze the belly button back towards the spine and then up towards the heart. Going again, bringing in a fresh supply of oxygen, energy, life force, and then exhaling fully, letting go of everything you don't need, letting go of all the busy thoughts of the day, really allowing yourself to be here now, mind, body, breath, and spirit. I'd like you to continue breathing slow, long, deep inhalations, slow, long, deep exhalations. And I'm just going to read a little excerpts from Meditations for Caregivers. Caring for a loved one can be a long journey. Reflecting on the meaning and the value of what you are doing makes it easier to maintain dedication to this important task. So Dr. Kenedy, I'd really like to acknowledge you for your dedication to this important task. Just bring the palms together in front of the heart center. The spirit in me honors the spirit in you. Namaste.
Namaste. Awesome. That always makes me feel good about moving forward. Thank you, Robin. So Dr. Kenedy, without further ado, could you introduce yourself to our viewers? I know this is the first time many of them have heard of you or been watching you. So give us a little bit of your history and how it relates to caregivers, and also even in yoga, if you will.
I'll do a brief.
Like me, I know. That's so much.
I mean, I am a hybrid, whole person. I have training in business, and Harvard Business School strategist, and in the corporate world, in media, and at MTV Networks, Universal, a number of different entities, and in the interactive space, founded VH1 Interactive and the VH1 Radio Network, and in the early 90s. And then almost died in 1997. I was, launching things and completely not really taking care of myself as I knew to do, because I grew up with yoga since I was 4. My mom did yoga and was into holistic health, and she was juicing, had wheatgrass and all these different things. A very unusual household to be in New York, not LA.
Sure.
And so I ended up having to my mom and said, the doctors are like, eat anything, and it was an autoimmune response, Crohn's, which is a GI, disorder. And the doctor said, eat anything. And I was like, that doesn't seem quite right. And so I went gluten-free. back in '97, and I rededicated myself to yoga, and it healed me. It healed me. It transformed my life. I began to teach at Integral Yoga, where I trained, and then I founded the first yoga studio in Harlem in 2001. And then I left. I left the media world. People thought I lost my mind. Did she have a breakdown? It was a breakthrough, and I started to shift my consciousness. And what's important for this conversation is that the thing that really pulled me away from that corporate race was my father had been diagnosed with Alzheimer's. And so that coincided with my decision to leave. I was vice president, one of the youngest at MTV Networks and all, but it was more important for me to spend time with my dad, and to begin to sit with him. And my father was professor, philosopher. He did work around the world. Both my parents, 5 decades, 5 continents,
Wow.
And really pioneering work. So I would sit with him. That became my meditation, actually, was to sit with him without my agenda. And just listen and just be. And it was a practice. And so that helped me actually find my own voice and create Power Living, which really comes from my parents' work around human development and potential and leadership, what they did around the world. And so the yoga foundation of that, from the studio, I started to offer cooking classes and empowerment programs and all these different things, which was really about human potential. And so I find it interesting. I hadn't really thought about it for a long time, that what really pushed me, or pulled, was my father's, journey with Alzheimer's. And my mother was taking care of him at home, and she's in New York. We're in New York, and I was the only child. My brother and sister were elsewhere in California and Virginia. And so I was here, and I was going from Harlem to out to St. Albans constantly to support my mother, and in that whole journey. So that was the start of it. And now my work, it's still, Power Living is all about a conscious approach to living well. So we integrate food, movement, mindset, and a number of other things to help people with sustainable wellness, authentic success, and mindful leadership.
Oh, that is so wonderful. I know it's so hard to put 20 years into 2 minutes, but you did an amazing job. And, for those of you who don't know about Dr. Kenedy, I will put in your information in our group chats, and I'll post them so that when people, get the opportunity, part of why we do this live, and then we'll repost later, so that our caregivers who really don't have the opportunity to sit down and catch us right here, right now, they'll still have the opportunity on YouTube or any other platform to get your information. So I'll be sure to put that contact info there for you guys. But I wondered if we could kind of shift to the awareness project that you have, because this is something that really intrigued me. Basically, of course, I'm a geriatric care manager, but I mean, on many different levels, this opened my eyes to things that I didn't even know existed. So the project I'm talking about, and you'll, I guess, clarify for our viewers, but it's around awareness for elder guardianship issues or abuse. And I was wondering if you could speak a little bit about that. I know, well, Robin introduced me to you, but I know you have.
And I'd like to say that it was because of that. And once again, us paralleling that I didn't feel alone, and I didn't all of a sudden feel like I was overreacting, because I think a lot of people around me felt I was, like hyper vigilant or helicopter, when my father moved out of his lady friend's house, left the hospital, and they sent him there by himself. And then talking to the lawyers, I just kept feeling like, ooh, this doesn't feel warm and fuzzy. So take it away.
Yeah, and that's exactly why I created Elder Dignity because we did not know. Guardianship was not on my radar or our family's radar at all. And if we had known certain things early on, we would have made different decisions. And in 2011, we are celebrating Christmas with my aunt Lily. We've flown in from New York to Florida. Regular family Christmas. She's fine. She was driving her little sports Mercedes, cooking, shopping, just living her life.
Living her best life.
Exactly. She had stated wishes. I'm aging in place. She built a house just for that, and then 4 weeks later, a family friend, without us knowing, he invites her to visit. In Winter Garden, Florida. So just a little while. And he has a younger girlfriend who was a pharmacist. This becomes important. And a young son. And my aunt, we've known him for a while. They had just reconnected. She went to visit. But before going, she went to her doctor to get prescriptions for blood pressure medicine, and he went with her. And without her knowing, got a 2-line note from the doctor saying she is mentally incompetent. And then the doctor gave him a guardianship attorney contact. So it's a setup,
Right, absolutely.
And so fast forward, the visit becomes extended, like she's still there. And it ends up later, we find out he took her cell phone, she was medicated, he files for petition, says he's a nephew, no relation.
Wow.
And so her only son dies, my cousin. And as soon as that happens, actually 2 days before it happened, so he was tracking his health. We didn't even know, he had kidney failure. He files for guardianship.
Oh my.
Doesn't name my mother as next of kin, no one else in the family. He tries to do it under the radar. In any case, my aunt, found one opportunity to get to the phone. Called 911. So I'm being held against my will. I'm Dr. White. Please come and get me. And I have to thank law enforcement in Winter Garden because it was a woman officer. And she saw my aunt was of sound mind. She said, call my sister in New York. She calls, I answer. Actually, and the officer spent 4 hours with my aunt and said she's of sound mind, didn't enact the Baker Act. And we found an actual family friend she could stay with that night. And that's kind of started it. So the first court hearing, the judge, who happened to be African-American, which becomes kind of, interesting later on, but he respected her. He had her speak in court, and he determined there was no need for guardianship.
Right.
So he declined there was a granddaughter that joined in any case. So he said no need for guardianship. But after that, this law firm representing the estranged granddaughter launched a multi-year campaign to strip her of her rights. So I say that to say, one, anyone can file a petition. They don't have to be related or anything. They don't even have to know in many states. And there's no due diligence. And so they can say whatever they want. They're not even looking for family members. And then a phrase that's often used is imminent danger. There's imminent danger. And so if you begin to hear anything like that,
right,
or if they say, well, just your family members over there, you're in a different state, you need a guardian to protect them. No.
I'm just nodding my head because these are all the little things that they were like feeding my father. We had an extended hospital stay, and then he went to rehab, which was a part of a nursing home, and they were really trying to get him to stay.
No. And to that point, so I'm jumping ahead in terms of just red flags.
Sure, yes.
If anyone begins to try to isolate or block access to a loved one, that's a big red flag. Right. So huge red flag, or they should stay a little bit longer, or anything like that. Red flag. So in case, fast forward, my mother my aunt calls her sister. My mother flies to Florida, and they say the only way you can do anything is contest this. So she gets into this whole guardianship realm.
Right.
And the firm keeps on coming after my aunt. After it said there's no need for guardianship. So they forced her in front of an evaluation committee. And so here's my second point is that, so this evaluation committee ended up saying she's paranoid because she thinks someone's trying to steal her money, and she named who it was.
Right.
So that's not paranoia.
That's not right.
It's a cry for help.
Yes.
So one of my pet peeves here within this whole system and looking to reform is that when all these points where seniors might be asking for help, where we're actually discriminating against them by not listening.
Right.
So no one listened. Instead, they said, let's strip her of her rights because she's paranoid. And so that brought her in under a limited guardianship. The judge did push back a little bit because he saw her in court, and then he saw the reports, and there was a disconnect. Right. He should have thrown it out. But he said, oh, limited guardianship. Who do you want? And she says, my sister. So my mother becomes guardian. The firm, I will only call them by the firm, they did not like that because the only way for them to get hold of the trust was completely strip away my aunt's rights, according to her trust. And so they spent the next few years coming after her, more evaluations. She's paranoid. She's this. They began to attack my mother because she was defending her. And so the only way they were able to finally do what they ended up doing was to abduct my aunt. So again, we didn't know that this happens. Right. And so the case is moved to Flagler County, where my aunt's home actually was, smaller county. The other one was Orlando, or bigger city. Sure. But Flagler, the judge's husband was the captain in the sheriff's office. It's a small area. And not a lot of people like this.
No, absolutely.
And so what happens is that judge, the attorneys go in front of this new judge, and they start creating a new narrative, like based on nothing. They start making things up, and it's more litigation, and all of the litigation fees come out of the seniors' assets.
Oh, wow.
So that's the thing also. That's part of the racket. Let's just make litigation up so that we can drain the seniors' account. But still, my aunt was very vocal.
Right.
They said the only way to shut her up is to actually take her. So the court-appointed guardian, emergency temporary guardian, there was no emergency. 2 police reports said that she was safe in her home, all these different things. But they literally took her from a doctor's appointment. My sister brought her to the appointment, regular appointment. The guardian is there in the waiting room. The receptionist calls my sister in the other room to supposedly fill out papers. When Sheila comes back, Aunt Lily's gone.
Oh my goodness.
She never returned home. They said, we're not going to disclose her location. They hid her for 2 years. We had no idea where she was. And all of the agencies, I went to APS, I went to everything, governor's office. Oh, she's fine. She's fine. This Black woman tucked away, like in a home, but you don't even know where she is. She's fine. And so that's beginning. So that when she was abducted in 2016 was when I developed Elder Dignity as an initiative to say, whoa, okay, people can abduct seniors. No agency is going to help. And I began to learn about how it works. And I think I wrote an article for the Huffington Post, is Elder Guardianship a New Form of Human Trafficking? And it caused a lot of people to call me. And I got wired into a national network of other people, this happened to their families. And we compared notes, and there's a similar pattern in practice. Instigate, liquidate, isolate, liquidate, steal the estate, and celebrate.
Right.
And cremate, which is what they did with my aunt eventually. But and that's the process. And no matter what state it is, we're finding that's a similar pattern of practice. Even though there are laws. Okay, so they're in the middle of in 2010, the Elder Justice Act. A number of my fellow advocates were, fighting for legislation. And finally, there's this Elder Justice Act, but it has no legs. No one wants to prosecute because a lot of the people who are involved in this have Esquire after their names. So there are predatory attorneys who are saying to family members, your power of attorney is not good. You need a guardianship. Or, so they're feeding people into this guardianship system.
Right.
Once you're in, you can't get out.
No.
That is very true. Like a tiny percent who happened to, I was on the phone earlier today with someone I know, and he took his mother out of a care facility.
Yes.
And now he's up on criminal charges for kidnapping.
Of course. Yes.
And the mother died a month after they took her back. And he's still fighting for kidnapping charges.
Yeah, his freedom at this point. Yes.
Right.
And I did have a similar situation. Once again, he was coming from rehab and they wanted to keep him there. And I just didn't like them. And I felt that they were feeding his mind with all these things. I said, no, I want him to go. I'm going to come and get him tomorrow. And me and the aide at the time, like, okay, come on, Dad. And they had security escort us out. And then they tried to ban us at the front desk. But the thing was, I was able to walk in and the head was like, oh, you're not supposed to be here. Did you sneak in? I said, no, I signed in. She was trying to get me, I guess, all set up. And I'm like, whoa, this is really not right. And they didn't think I had my father's paperwork in order. And the paperwork had the contingency unless he's deemed. But they didn't think I even had that. So once I was able to show the paperwork, they got, and that was just 4 months prior that the paperwork was put in place. It was that cold close because I really felt them coming for him. And I could not believe how much they were feeding things into his head to turn him against me. Right. So when I saw what you were doing, it just triggered. I was like, okay, I'm not crazy. This is something that's really going on. And by the skin of my teeth, by 4 months, that paperwork that was in place was able to help me. But I'm seeing how even with the power of attorney, there still could have been some other things. Yeah. Because I even saw how the attorney would take him in another room, and I didn't know what was going on, and I felt that they were confusing him and milking his time as they charged him by the hour. But I didn't really have any power to do anything. It's such a helpless situation. And once again, all I can say is, thank goodness, we were able to do it. And I even have to give my father credit for, he was the one who called up the teachers union to get him a good attorney on his behalf. Once again, it was scary because I think they were feeling him out and in the situation, but ultimately it helped him to, stay in his home and the two of us to work things out.
And that's
scary.
That's the ideal, is to be able to age, to be able to do whatever you want. And if your desire is to age in place, then technology can enable that now. And there's so many more resources now to allow a senior to age in place, where you don't need guardianship by design is punitive, and it strips rights and you become a non-citizen. Right. At this point, I personally feel it's not necessary. It needs to be completely overhauled so that seniors can thrive and have more supported decision making and things like that, because it's too predatory.
It is. I wholeheartely agree, Dr. Kenedy. And it's such a vicious cycle. I think that people who end up in the midst of it are so overwhelmed by the emotional and not only the emotional burden, but that stress of having to go through this process. As you alliterated just now, it was a multi-year progress. It literally happened not in one day, but little by little by little in these small increments. And when we're busy living our lives, doing our thing, a lot gets swept under the rug. It's all under the radar. And there's a lot of collusion in the system around this predatory nature. And I just wanted to kind of recap for people who have come in or just kind of sneaking in. And also, we've got a couple comments. I don't want to forget about this because we're so passionate about this subject, and others are too. I've got a couple people who are saying, it's the setup. And they earlier said namaste to us, ladies and gentlemen. But we want to make sure that we're checking in on our elders. I think that's one of the number one things, because it sounds like from what I'm hearing, if you hadn't really been in close communication and contact with not only your sister, but your aunt and the people kind of in and around her circle, though it didn't end up the way that, you know, you would have liked it to, it could have been much worse. And thankfully she was cared for, it sounds like. But at the end of the day, there are often times where people are not. And that isolation piece is so huge. I was wondering if you mentioned tools. Is there anything in particular or resources that you could direct any of our viewers to if they're going through a similar circumstance or are fearful that they might end up in that situation?
There is, well, one thing is it didn't end up like she ended up being isolated for 4 years and then died of COVID-19. It didn't have to happen. If she had been returned to her home, she would have been here today. But there are a number of organizations. So AAAPG, the Americans Against Abusive Guardianship. I can give you some links to.
Sure, absolutely. Yes.
AAAPG. So that's an organization you can learn about. Go to Elder Dignity. We have different links to articles and all. I mean, I would say that one is make sure you, if you have a trust or, you know, you get your estate plan in order. And if you have a trust, make sure you trust your successor trustee. So that's a good one. And also make sure you have people around you. You create your own support network. People who know what's going on, that your senior, you know, loved one is in X place, whether it's a certain state or, you know, whatever it is, but knowledge and connection and the use of technology is key. And so tracking, cameras, things like that. Now, even if something like this happens and you have to get an attorney, you really go with your gut, because some attorneys try to feed you into this whole system. And so your antenna have to be up in terms of interviewing. And if they're really pushing back on like power of attorney or pushing a guardianship, step away. And is a key thing. And reach out, like again, to Elder Dignity or AAAPG. There's another organization called SEER Justice, CEAR, run by Rick Black, someone I know well, another advocate. So all of these people have been through this, and they're now advocating and helping others.
Okay, wonderful.
And I wanted to know how you utilize yoga. That's, I know, part of your background to, you know, manage the very stressful issues that were presented during that whole process.
Yoga saved me once again. I mean, I ended up in the hospital. My mother, my sister, and myself all ended up in the hospital at certain times because of the degree of stress and the attacks. I mean, very viciously toward us from these attorneys. And I ended up having to rededicate myself back on the mat, back in my walks in nature, all of those things to, you know, support me and bring the light back in, because I thrive with the light, and this was very, very dark. And if I had not had my yoga practices, I don't know. I mean, I would have been taken out at this point, because it's just very, very heavy.
Absolutely. And I think that
you're so validating me. I'm like
100%. Yes.
This is so hard and heart-wrenching. And thank goodness I have these skills. So that's where, you know, I wanted to share that with Bahami. And I'm so happy that, you know, once again, you're here to validate and share all this very important information.
It's been an amazing, amazing last few minutes with you all, ladies. We have come to time. I didn't know if there was anything that we didn't discuss, but maybe we might have to have you back here again, Dr. Kenedy, if you could so indulge in us, because I think this is not only an important topic just for caregivers, but really for everyone who has an aging loved one in their lives.
Or even for us as we age. huge. You know,
Yes, right. This is true.
Everything with my father, I'm like getting my circle together, like you said,
Yes.
making sure my paperwork is ordered. Oh, you don't have to worry. I'm 60. My mother passed away at 60. COVID's in the air. I'm making sure I have everything in order.
Good point, Robin. I think the overwhelm, the burnout, the caregiver burnout, all these things that kind of happen on this journey can really be helped and healed with some of these practices. But I think overall, everybody just needs to know first. They need to know where their vulnerabilities are and where their risk factors are before they kind of get into a situation that they're just completely overwhelmed by.
And the last thing I'll leave you with
absolutely.
If there's any dysfunction in your family in general, take care of it as soon as you can and have those family conversations so that an outside force, that wasn't the issue in our instance, but the attorneys will try to, manipulate if there's any disagreement within a family and then take it over.
Right.
So and that's the thing to recognize.
Yes.
That's where the exploitation will happen. So
very, very valid. Yes, very valid. I can tell you as a care manager, I have been in the midst of trying to be that person that is the mediator within the family to essentially protect them from that kind of a situation. So I'm going to support that and give that, an actual check, because ladies and gentlemen, this does happen every day and it's unfortunate, and we want to do our best to help prevent it, but also just give you a space to express yourself and, get the information that you need to. So with that, my ladies and gentlemen, that is the end of our show. Our season 2, episode 1 is complete. I want to thank you all for being here. We love to have our caregivers just give us whatever questions, information, things that they want to talk about. So feel free to direct message us, email us, or just post something in the comments under this video, because at the end of the day, we want to give you the information that you need, and we won't know unless you talk to us. So with that, I want to thank you all. Have a wonderful evening. And that pretty much concludes our episode.
Caregivers Embracing Elder Care.
Bye, everyone. Have a wonderful evening. And we're out.